Thank you for listening in on our podcast in the series, Intergenerational Conversations on Climate. The podcast brings together voices from high school students and senior citizens from around New Brunswick to discuss their concerns about climate change in our province. The project is the product of Voices for Sustainable Environments and Communities as part of your province's Environmental Trust Fund at Work, exploring concerns and hopes represented by senior citizens and high school students. Climate crises appear in global and national news with increasing frequency and desperation. Voices of concern can be heard every day. Voices of hope are less common. How do our friends and neighbors think about the new climate? Let's find out. I'm Bruce Langus. I'll be your facilitator today. And in my productive life, I was a geologist. Connor, your introduction.
I'm a student at OHS, and I like sports. I have a job, part-time, and I love nature.
Excellent.
My name is Tom McLean. I'm a retired software developer. A lot of my interest right now, retired, is looking at ways to improve our transition to clean energy.
That's good. And you live in?
I live in New Maryland.
Very good. Very good. Tell me how do you develop retired software? I didn't quite understand that.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm a software developer who is retired.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now that we've got that covered. All right. First question, we'll go to Tom. Whose climate information do you trust?
Well, I look to climate scientists. So there's a number of websites and newsletters that are produced by people who have both been educated, trained, and publish in atmospheric physics and other sciences that are directly related to climate. And so I go to those sites and newsletters to get my updates on what's currently happening, what has happened, and what's likely to happen. So even when I listen to mainstream media or other, I often will do back checks to make sure that what they're saying is actually accurate, because often there will be some sort of spin, and so I like to back check those things with multiple experts who actually had training and education, and of course have actually published in those sciences.
Very good. Connor, same question to you. Whose information do you trust?
I personally trust the government, but I like fact-checking them, back-checking them, just to make sure they got all their things right and they're not leaving anything out that's important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How does somebody, I presume that none of us then put much credence into the screamers who are on the media, who are wanting us to do something immediately. How does a person like Greta Thunberg, how does she fit in? She's not a scientist. How does she fit in? Is she a trusted individual? Do you know who I mean by Greta Thunberg? Yeah.
I'd say she's an activist. Not really a scientist, but not a screamer who's just screaming out nonsense.
Mm-hmm. So she has a fair amount of trust.
Yeah, she's been quite specific and quite accurate, I think, with her comments. She has not been one to spin or to use hyperbole unnecessarily, for sure. She has been quite clear about the crisis we're in. And certainly the information I've read from scientists backs up what she says.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you trust Canadian government leaders or government climate scientists and their information?
I try and trust just whoever has the best information, whoever doesn't add anything extra and just tends to, tell the best story with the best information.
Yeah, I've looked for various sources. I've found them in Australia, in the US, and Canada, and of course in other places as well. I don't get too hung up on what nationality they happen to have. Again, I look for people who are experienced and educated and published. So I certainly I respect and trust those people to give us the straight goods.
Politicians, where do they fall on the spectrum, on the trust spectrum for you, Tom?
Well, there are some that are actually trying to move us along, and there are many that aren't. And I think that's a reflection of where the Canada's population is at. There's trying to balance the sense of security, but at the same time knowing that there's urgency to act. So I'm really disheartened by a number of things that politicians have done and not done. But I know that there are some that have actually been trying to move the needle on getting us to actually move ahead with climate action. So there, kind of a middle of the road answer for you.
Okay. Connor, what about you? Politicians and government scientists, where are they on the spectrum?
I'd say they're on a thin line. Like, they got a balance between the audience and the sense of, security. Like, they're like actors. They have to play the role.
Mm-hmm. How can we improve the effective political policies from our politicians by using good government science, Tom?
Well, one of the mechanisms I've heard of, it's called a citizens' assembly. And I first heard about that when Fair Vote Canada was talking about how can we move ahead with electoral reform. And it's a very powerful mechanism that allows our politicians to gather a cross-section of Canadian population together to actually hear from experts and put together recommendations on a particular topic. In this case, of course, climate action. And I think that's one way of trying to close the gap of competing interests between our elected officials and what the people that they're elected to represent are actually doing. So that's one way that I think if we can convince our government to do it, could make a big difference. And citizens' assemblies are not new. They've been used in the UK, in Australia, and other places. So I think that's quite a bit of a strong possibility for success.
Are they public forums?
It's actually people that are drawn across a broad cross section of the population by random lot, mm-hmm. And they are given a mandate, a budget, to actually come together as a separate body that will then investigate, research, discuss a particular aspect of life, again, climate change or electoral reform, whatever, and then use on that basis, then make specific recommendations to government, which then have the weight of the fact that here is a cross section of the population actually saying this is what we want to have done based on the expertise that we've heard.
Connor, how does that idea sound to you?
I like the idea of public forums and just public opinions, because who is better to ask than the people who are actually living in this world?
Gotcha. Yeah, I would agree with that.
If I could just add to that, I think it's also useful if people have been informed. So when they're drawing their decisions or their judgments, they can base that on informed knowledge.
Kind of a little sidelight to that. Tom, have you ever written to your MLA or member of parliament urging climate action?
Yes, I've written to my MP multiple times on various aspects of climate action, the use of clean energy, the need for taking action more quickly than we have. Yes, I have.
Connor, have you ever written to your MLA or MP?
I've written once, and it was about clean energy ideas, but they never got back to me, so I never wrote again.
They didn't even write you a letter saying thank you for your meaningless letter?
No, they did not.
Wow.
Yeah, that usually they'll have somebody do that right away.
Yeah.
And then throw it away.
Well, actually, I think it's important to write letters because I do actually think they have an impact. And if it's just one letter they receive, that's obviously a small impact. But if it's one of thousands, then that can have a big impact. So, actually, Connor, I would definitely recommend trying again.
I wonder if your whole environmental science class got together and each wrote a letter to Jenica Atwin or whoever your MLA is, if that would have more of an impact.
Well, I feel like the more people urging the MLAs and MPs to call to action, the more they're going to think it's urgent. Because if it's just one person screaming at a giant, that's not really the giant's not going to hear. But if maybe like 60, 30, 1,000 people scream, then they just might hear.
Okay. Who has more to lose from climate disasters, Connor? Teenagers or senior citizens?
I feel like students have the more or most to lose out on, because they lose out on school, they lose out on pretty much everything, but like senior citizens have a solid base foundation that they can go back on. Students, they rely on other people.
Tom, what do you think about that? Who has more at stake? Students? Senior citizens?
Well, just from a lifespan, for sure, students, teenagers, the youth, for sure, they have more to lose because I've had a pretty good life, and part of that, for sure, thanks to fossil fuels. And so it makes no sense for me to push the cost of that onto the next generation. So there's more need for me to take action, but definitely the action that actually is going to have more impact on the lives of the young right now, for sure.
And that's directly related to voting power. Yes, I think you're right. Would you also advocate at the same time as giving 16-year-olds to vote, could we remove the vote from the 70-year-olds, us dinosaurs?
Well, that's interesting. I have no problem extending the voting age to 16. I figure if we can say a 16-year-old can drive a car, a couple thousand tons or pounds of steel and metal going down the road, I'm pretty sure that we can extend the voting age there. Not so crazy about the idea of losing the vote at 70, though. So maybe I'll take a hard pass on that one.
Okay. Connor, what do you think about that? The vote for 16-year-olds?
I agree that if you're allowed to drive a car, you should be allowed to vote, but I feel like everyone should have a voice, so why take it away from the elders?
Even though I have, being in that honored group of over 70s, even though I have a very limited frame of reference, I'm going to be voting to protect.
Wow, that sounds pretty narrow.
Yes,
Bruce, I think maybe we can give ourselves a bit more benefit of the doubt that maybe a few of the seniors actually would vote to do a bit more than that. How's that?
Well, okay, maybe.
Sorry, Connor, I did I cut you off?
No.
Maybe some of those 70-year-olds, are doing are making podcasts of of students, things like that are well worthwhile. Tom, on that same avenue, are you and your friends and your family concerned about coming climate crises?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I certainly, many of my friends are very concerned about the crisis that, of course, is here now and continuing to accelerate. It's not a binary, because it's not a new climate. We're actually things are going to continue to get worse until we take action to trim our emissions. So I have some friends that have that no longer drive a car. They only take a bike everywhere. They've gone from meat and vegetables to vegan. They've done an amazing number of things. I'm not that pure for sure. But I have other friends that continue to fly, they continue to drive, they continue to just say, we'll just try to be nice people and everything will work out because, technology or something will save us, I guess. So, I have quite a range of people that I know that in terms of their reaction to what they think the climate crisis is or how it's going to pan out. So it's, I guess part of that is that I try to talk about it with my friends as much as I can, not to harp on it, but also try to make sure that they're at least aware of some of the things they can do if they're not doing it already.
Very good. Connor, do you and your friends discuss climate, and are any of them concerned about the coming climate crises?
Yeah, we are. We discuss it just sometimes, but it's always a melancholy topic because it's just harsh, because we're going to have, I don't know, wives, kids, and they're going to have to grow up in this climate, and it's just getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm. Do any of your peers mention that they're reluctant to have families?
Yeah, and there's some people in my class that say they're not going to have kids because they don't want them growing up in this climate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's harsh. That's harsh, definitely.
Very melancholic, very sad.
Yeah. Given that degree of seriousness, why are students not out in the streets every day demanding climate action? Connor.
Because we as students have an obligation to, try and get good grades, and not all of us can just be out there every day demanding like a better climate, better systems. But I feel like more people should definitely rally out and cry out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can almost ask how come all our seniors aren't out there yelling for a better future as well. And right. I don't have a good answer for that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should be.
Well, maybe there are, just like in the times of the racial inequities and those protests in the 60s, there were a lot of churches who had that as part of their toolkit of going out and protesting on a regular basis. Maybe there are churches in Canada who should be doing this about climate change.
I think so. Like, I don't go to church anymore, but I feel like there should be rallies that the church or just really anyone sets up.
Yeah, I think rallies and protests and continue to have a strong public voice to keep it in the public domain is really good. My efforts tend to be on educate, to make sure that people are aware of what's happening, but also to help people understand what they can be doing. One of the pieces, of course, is reducing what we burn. If you're burning something, it's not a good thing, and electrify everything. So, for example, with a car, some of us can drive electric cars, but not everybody can afford an electric car right now. So, what do? You drive a smaller car. If you can't drive a smaller car, drive it more slowly, because that can save gas. So there's lots of things that people can do that usually save them money.
Right. You touched on something there that education is something that needs to be going along with action. Right now, a large majority, about 80% of Canadians, believe that humanity is responsible for climate change and for climate crises. Is it now time to drive people to action rather than more education about climate crises?
I think education is very important because people should know that their actions have consequences. But, like, there should definitely be at least a bit more action than teaching, because all of us know that, like, driving cars bad for the environment, and traveling long distances, eating meats is causing climate change. And we all know that, but we should keep teaching younger generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's lots of education still required, both young and old, for sure. Like, part of action is knowing what the right action is to take. So, like I say, there's lots of things that people can be doing, often things that they require change for sure, but that can actually be either neutral or save people money, not always, but usually. For example, the use of wind power can actually save people money because wind is much cheaper to generate electricity than any other source of power right now. Not everybody realizes that. That's just one small example. So no, I think both are required, and not only from the perspective of letting people know what's happening in terms of climate and what solutions are available, but the fact that new solutions become available all the time. So what's currently happening? Now, technology is not going to save us, but I do think that education in terms of what actions we can take as individuals and what actions we can take to prompt, motivate, force organizations and government to take action are quite critical.
Mm-hmm. As a last question, Connor, what are some things you can do today to fight climate change?
I think, like, you shouldn't be telling everyone what to do, just encouraging it, like encouraging good behavior. Like, instead of driving 5 minutes to the store and back, ride your bike. Or instead of driving to the park, you can walk, enjoy the nature. I just feel like the small things add up. But, like, there definitely needs to be some big changes that we all need to take in order to fight climate change.
Tom?
Yeah, I like Connor's point about the bike. It's something that I keep on forgetting because I'm such a car generation guy, that really active transportation and public mass transportation are far better than a car, even an electric car. So I think that's really good in keeping in mind that we need to start renovating and building our towns and cities to accommodate active transportation, to make sure that we're supporting those things. Myself, I've committed to stop flying until there's electric flights available. I now have an electric car. I don't have a fireplace. I have a heat pump, so I electrify all my heating. I have cut down on my meat consumption, not totally out, but cut it down. So all those things, like I say, I'm not perfect. I still have a snowblower that burns gas, but I know that it doesn't have to be a binary thing. It's a transition. So I consider myself transitioning, and I think that when people start saying, "Well, tomorrow we have to stop using all gas and oil," well, no, but we have to move on to not using gas and oil, and that's the transition.
Does that sound like sound thinking to you, Connor?
Oh, yeah, I think it's sound thinking. Like, everyone's not going to stop using their cars tomorrow. They're all going to not stop flying, but I feel like those should be cut down on and just regulated better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think with those thoughts, we are done. I want to thank both of you for taking the time to participate with us. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, both of you. And I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.